everyone, and welcome to the Digital EDU Dialogues podcast, where we talk about what's trending in higher ed issues and offer practical solutions. I am Angela Richer, and joining us today is Valary Oleinik. Welcome, Valary.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
The BAD group, we met Valary in her role on the board of directors at the U.S. Distance Learning Association. But what I love about Valary's amazing title as Chief Disruptor is that she is curious and a creative educator and consultant who focuses on gamification and learner engagement. And today we're going to talk about some of those topics.
Great. That sounds lots to talk about there. There's a lot of topics.
A lot of good stuff. So first, tell us about what you're working on right now. Any big projects that are fun that stand out for you?
Yeah, so I do wear many hats. So as you mentioned, I am on the board at USDLA, and so there we are heavily involved right now in getting ready for National Distance Learning Week, which I know we'll talk a little more about later. But throughout the year, we have events, and we're trying to help connect people, help spread information about distance and digital learning across the landscape. So we focus a lot on higher ed, but we have constituents that range all across the constituencies. We have the littles, the pre-K-12s, we got the bigs in the workforce, we've got telehealth, and anybody who's using it. Anybody who is using distance and digital is under our tent, and so we're trying to help a little bit for everybody where we can. So that's the one big thing I would say that's going on right now.
I heard a great phrase yesterday that education for K through 100.
That's beautiful.
Like
I'm stealing that. I'm borrowing that.
Yes.
Or stealing it or whatever.
Yes. I was like, that is it. That is everything.
I
Especially for those
love
of us that
it.
work in that continuing education branch of things.
Yes. Well, because higher ed, I mean, I think a lot of people still have that sort of traditional image when you say a college student. I'll put that in, scare quotes, but people still have sort of an image of college student as being that 18 to 24, whatever. But even when I was in college, and that was a few years back, I went to a college here in New Orleans, and the average age when I was in college there was 26. So even then, like that wasn't, there was a lot of non-traditional, what would be considered non-traditional. And I think that's one of the things we're looking at is there's a lot more of that. And I think finally more of the institutions are kind of catching on that, hey, there's a lot more population out there, because that little demographic of 18 to 24 is shrinking and is very small, increasingly small right now, just because of birth rates. And you look back in time, and here we are 18 to 24 years later, and if people weren't born, then they're just not they're not here.
And I'm absolutely seeing that in my classrooms across institutions, that I've got a lot of learners that are returning in their 20s, 30s, 40s, even 50s, coming back to get an undergraduate degree. So so let's talk a little bit more about that, about some of the trends that you're seeing in distance education, and how are organizations adapting to this new population?
Yeah, I mean, I think what's interesting. I mean, this is such an interesting time for so many reasons. I mean, distance education, obviously a lot of people did not have good feelings about it or did not know anything about it prior to the pandemic, and then everybody suddenly thought they knew about it, which of course I think that's part of what we're dealing with now. Is there's sort of that lagging trend of people still think what they had during COVID was distance education, when in fact across the board, again, it was not. It was remote emergency teaching, or whatever other fun phrases we want to come up with.
Yes, Sheila, our COO, calls it emergency learning. Like, that was an emergency.
Exactly.
Now let's start doing good and quality, engaging.
Exactly. And I think Sheila's right on the mark, as usual. But I think that is one thing that I'm seeing, is that people have shifted from how do I do it to how do I do it well. There is unfortunately, I think, too large of a population that are losing the lessons learned of the past few years, and they're making that rush back to, we just have to get back to the classroom. We just have to get back to normal. If we just go back, and going back is not, in my opinion, an option. It's not a good place to be. And ultimately it leaves a lot of our learners out. It's very, it's not inclusive. So many people had opportunities, and it sounds so weird, but so many learners had opportunities during COVID that they never would have had otherwise. Now, obviously, because of equity with access to broadband and technologies and things, we had the other version, which was we did have a lot of people who were not included, or not included equitably because they weren't they did not have access to things. We've all seen the pictures of the kids sitting outside of a Burger King, or the school buses with the Wi-Fi on them, where people started to be creative and said, hey, we've got this large thing that could have a lot of panels on it, and we could, so people, it was kind of, unfortunately, in some ways created more divide, in other ways it lessened some. So it was kind of that zigzag of, good and bad. And now I think we're sort of in that, a little bit settled, and so now people have that opportunity to kind of reflect. And obviously some people are not going to do that, but the larger, the population that we're talking to absolutely is doing that. And so I think that's wonderful. So I think those are some of the big things, is just kind of, now how do we do it better?
Yeah.
Like some of my work with gamification before COVID, people wanted to talk gamification. During COVID, everybody was like, something about that distance stuff, right? And that's all they wanted to talk, which was perfectly fine. That's all they wanted to talk about, was how do I convert on-site to online? And then now I'm starting to notice the shift back to, people are like, okay, I need more engagement. So, okay, I've got Zoom, I've got Teams, whatever it is.
Mhm.
I've got some technology. We kind of know how to use it. We may not be using it to its fullest, but
Mhm.
we kind of feel like we have our feet under us. And so now we can pivot to trying to serve better. So whether that's engagement, whether that's more focus, I've seen on accessibility, um, and just all of those mental health. Uh,
Mhm.
we mentioned US. We met through USDLA, and I would say by far the highest attendance, or the most interest I've seen at some of our webinars, have been the ones around mental health, neurodivergence, accessibility. I mean, little a, big A. Uh, so the whole idea, I would say, if we go with the acronym, now people are shifting
Mhm.
from EI a little bit to idea, so that we get the inclusion, the diversity, equity, and the accessibility added onto it. So I love that idea, so to speak. But yeah, so those are, yeah, it's like we have the technology sort of, and now what do we do with it to make it better? So.
Yeah. So this idea, like, we had the pandemic, we had some things we knew how to do, but now we've had to use the tools. So let's learn how to use them really well to serve all of our learners.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. We are going to take a 30-second break. And when we come back, we are going to talk to Valary more about gamification and how to use gamification for engagement. And for people like me to say, how can I use this cool tool in my classroom when I'm not a gamer? So we will be right back.
Today's episode is brought to you by Professor Services. Looking for a job in teaching? Need to expand your network? Want to boost your income? Whatever it is, the expert team at Professor Services has you covered. From helping higher ed faculty find new jobs, to essential tools such as cover letters and CVs, to applying to jobs for you, Professor Services equips you to nail your job search. Don't stress over the job hunt. Maximize your potential and crush your next opportunity with support from our team of experienced administrators, mentors, and educators. Discover how the team at Professor Services can help. Visit professorservices.com today to get started and kickstart your career in higher education.
And I am back with Valary Oleinik. We are talking about gamification and using that as a tool to increase engagement. So share with us some of the things that you are working on, and what are your best practices and advice for us?
Sure. So first, I'm gonna back up to something you said a moment ago, which is, but I'm not a gamer, and and I get that. I totally get that a lot. And I wish we had a better name for what we do, but
Mhm,
gamification is what we got, so we're kind of stuck with it now. I think we're not going to be able to change it. Um, but really, for me and for many people, I in my community, it's not about making games. It's not about making everything into a game. So that's a bit of a misnomer. We do leverage the fact that games, and in particular video games, have created such opportunities for interaction, engagement, that to not learn from them and to not try to leverage some of the power of them would not make sense.
mhm,
I have a sticker on the back of my laptop, if you could see the other side of my computer right now, that actually says learners deserve better. And
mhm,
that's how this all started. I was a classroom trainer in a corporate environment, and I just was like, this is not enough. Like, we're doing the same thing in the same way. And it's totally no judgment here. We teach the way we were taught. And so we just keep perpetuating these behaviors in the classroom because that's what we know. And
mhm,
again, no fault of our own, quite often. People may not have access, may not have had it modeled to do it a different way, may not feel that they have the permission to do it a different way. They may feel that, there's too many rules in their environment. And I absolutely understand everybody's situation is unique. But gamification is really, I use a lot of different sort of phrases for it. It's augmented instructional design. It's taking good instructional design and leveling it up. It's like, it's not going to fix bad stuff. So if somebody comes to me and says, "Oh, I just need you to make my class more fun. Can't you help me make it more fun?" And I'm like, "No, I am not going to help you make it more fun." Ultimately, it will. Fun's an outcome. Fun's not something that I try to design into it necessarily. I mean, certainly there's aesthetics and there's things we can
mhm,
talk about, but fun's not the goal
mhm,
here. The goal is to get to the learner outcomes that we're trying to help people with. And gamification is just a tool. So I always tell people, really, if you think about it just as sort of the lever that can move your instructional design around. So sometimes instructional design needs to be more simplistic, more perhaps aesthetic, more playful. If we're in the workplace, it's a job aid. I don't need a training. I need a nice designed infographic. I need simple. On the other hand, maybe I do have a class where I'm trying to teach people a very complex system sort of thing, and I need a full simulation. So I do need that immersive. I want to put them in an environment where they feel like they're actually doing the thing in the environment they would be working in. That's the other extreme of gamification. Now we're getting into really serious games and all of that. And I'm okay with, some people are more specific about the definitions and very limited. I'm okay with it being any of that because my goal is to help the learners. And so if it's one extreme or the other extreme, I'm okay. I don't limit it to I always give people definitions in class because they want a definition, but really, for me, it's about putting the learner at the center and recognizing that gamification is a collection of disciplines having to do with creativity, instructional design, marketing, behavioral economic, like all of them. Like, I
mhm.
could pull up a slide that has like 20 different items, and that probably wouldn't be all of them. But the learner is like, if we had a Venn diagram, it's like all of those intersect, and like the learner is at the center. And that for me is the power of gamification. So that's like, I have to get people to that point first before we can actually have to kind of unlearn, help them unlearn some of the other stuff first.
Yes, that's such a good point that it's just like any of our other instructional design tools, like an infographic. I'm thinking my daughter and friends were working collaboratively on an escape room activity for a group project
Mhm.
this week. And so that gamification is just another one of those tools, or making a video. We talked about PowerPoints earlier, that it's just another tool to help students achieve the learning outcome, that it's not the outcome. It's
Exactly.
it's a
And
tool to help them get there.
yeah, and like, you mentioned escape rooms. They're beautiful because, again, part of it is it puts people in a good mindset to be ready to learn as well. It's a safer place to learn. People will play, and play is not a bad word. That's how we learn. And so putting people in a situation that, first of all, they're interacting. That one has social built right into it. I always remind people that when we're talking about engagement, that's not like one magical word either. Like, toss it out there, like, I just want them to be more engaged. Okay, poof, like my magic wand, poof, you're engaged. Um, and so, I often help people break it down and go, well, what kind of engagement are we looking for in this particular moment? So are we looking for more cognitive engagement? Are we checking to make sure that they're thinking critically? Are we doing knowledge check? Like, what is the, depending on the subject matter, how are we handling that? And then there's specific gameful tools we can use for that type of engagement, which would be different perhaps from if I'm trying to do the social engagement, like the escape room, where I need them to be working together. And then we always are mindful. I tell people I have sort of a four part framework that I tell them to remember game. This is the easy way to remember it. So G is for goals. And so goals being not just the learning goals, but like we have to put that in the larger context of what are the goals of why we're using the gamification. If it's to get your completion rate up in your course, that has nothing to do directly with the learning outcome for the individual. Like they don't care what the completion, the learner doesn't care what the completion rate in your course is. What they're getting out of the course. So we have to think about both. We have to think about the higher level above the learning objectives, and we have to think about the individuals and why they would be motivated to do whatever it is we're asking them to do. So I think that's the first piece, and it's not linear. We're not doing Addy here. We're not. It's not a linear thing. But then focusing a lot more on the audience. I talked about, that's why I do gamification. Is it gives us better tools to help individual learners, but not respecting that is like a huge mistake that people make when they start designing things. So there's a whole set of tools we use with that. Then the M is for mechanics, which for me is not just game mechanics. I probably could have picked a better word when I was kind of designing the framework, but for me, it's more like if you are the mechanic and you're putting together the program, you're putting together a learning engine to drive that audience to those goals. So, like, if you think of it in terms of the whole building process, not just those little game pieces, we have to make it all fit together. And then the E would be for experience, because all of this has to work within the context. We also have to look at gamification as different than designing traditional learning. In that traditional learning, we design something, we package it, it's done. And gamification, because it does come heavily from the software and game design space, it's much more iterative. So we're always looking at, not just giving the learners feedback, but what feedback is the system getting and how can we adjust? How can we help the system grow with the learners? Because they can't necessarily keep doing the same thing over and over. That's going to get terribly engaging either. So yeah, so I think if people kind of start there, and again, it's iterative. It's not go this step, this step, this step. But if you think about those four major categories, um, that's a big leap forward in terms of changing your design. You'll design
Yes.
differently because particularly the audience piece, we do things like learner personas, and when you start putting a name and a face in front of yourself when you're designing, you absolutely will design differently when you're thinking about a particular persona instead of I just have to get all this content shoved into. We don't teach content, we teach people. Like let's act like it sometimes.
Yes. And it sounds like with everything you do, the learner is at the heart of it. And as someone who teaches communication and is always, the audience, 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 it's always about your audience. This really resonates with me, this idea that it's always about that audience and what do they need so they can complete the task and demonstrate their mastery of the learning
Yes.
objective. And having that acronym of GAME is such a great tool. I'm like, wait, writing this down, need this. And a great tool for all of us that are learning more about how to use gaming and gamification and that broader concept within our instructional design and teaching. All right, we are going to take another quick 30-second break. And when we come back, Valary is going to tell us about US Distance Learning Week.
This episode of Digital EDU Dialogues is brought to you by the BAB Group. The demands for teaching and online learning are constantly evolving. Don't get left behind. Carve out a competitive edge and give students engaging learning experiences with support from the BAB Group's team of course design experts. As experienced online faculty and instructional designers, the BAB Group knows how to craft those aha moments for students and meet outcomes for every modality, online, hybrid, and face-to-face. Creating engaging, welcoming, and inclusive learning spaces for students of all ages and abilities has never been more important. Discover how the BAB Group can help you by visiting their website today.
I'm Angela Britcher, and I am back with Valary, and we have talked about what's trending in distance learning and the growing into getting better post-pandemic. We've talked about gamification and engagement, and now we're going to talk about what's coming up for US Distance Learning Week.
Thank you. Yeah. Next, the first week of November, for those who have not participated before, the first week of November, which in 2023 will be November 6th through 10th. We always host USDLA host a series of free webinars open to anyone, so anyone can register. Please do. We offer this year we're offering 2 sessions per day, which is pretty standard. This year the theme is about AI. Not surprisingly, there's a little bit of interest around that. So we said, okay, we're going to lean into that, and we'll talk about this year. So as I said, we'll have 2 sessions per day. We have a range of people coming in from various institutions to talk about how they're using AI at their institution, some of the opportunities and challenges they see coming forward. We also have some practitioners coming in. We have one person who just won an award for the algorithm that they developed that's for a leadership training program on empathy. And it uses AI and some, immediate feedback, some chat bots, some various pieces. So you get a chance to see something in action beyond just, and I'm not diminishing, but beyond just, I think we've all seen quite a few probably sessions on how to write a chat GPT prompt or something like that. And those things are valuable, and a lot of people, that's where they are right now. But we're trying to give people a range of information as to what's happening. We're partners with our European colleagues. They also have Distance Learning Week activities going on, and so there's some crossover. One of our board members, Dr. Farah Banani, will be speaking both at ours and also on a panel with them. So we do work a lot closely with different organizations and institutions. And if you go to the website, you can see the full program of who's speaking and learn a lot more about it. And as I said, it's free to register. You just have to, sign up so we can send you the link and stuff. And that's it. And I really hope, share it with your colleagues. It's uh, it's an amazing opportunity each year, not just to see some content, meet some new presenters, hear some new presenters that maybe that you're not familiar with, but also just USDLA is a very warm, welcoming community, and you'll get a chance to meet some of the other board members, ask your questions about the association, and hopefully, consider joining us. We'll have some giveaways, we'll have some discounts for brand new members, and all sorts of other fun things throughout the week. But yeah, it's all. It's really just come, come and check it out for yourself.
I will be there. I
Um,
am signed up.
Yay!
And my interactions already with USDLA have been so positive in what you talked about, engagement, right? That interacting with colleagues from all over and being able to share our experiences and receive information from others has been really helpful. Is there anything else you want to share about what's coming up this year with USDLA?
Yeah, actually, we have right after the beginning of the year, so we have to start talking now before everybody runs away for holiday breaks and things. January 6th through the 16th, sorry, through the 18th, mark the calendars. That will be 3 days of public policy forum. So again, I don't have the full list of speakers. I'm not just being coy. I just don't have the full list of speakers yet. But if you, again, check in with the website, stay with us, sign up for the newsletter, which if you register for NDLW, you'll be added to the newsletter anyway. Um, but we'll have a series of speakers those 3 days, focusing more on the public policy aspects. And again, that topic alone, we could spend the whole year on probably, just the different aspects. There's so much going on. I had the opportunity recently at another conference to talk to some people about the congressional caucuses, the return of an e-learning caucus and things like that. So there's a ton, and obviously with legislation, but there's also on the side, as we talked about at the beginning, as far as access, broadband, all of those topics, the grants, there's just a range of topics, and then just the public policy in terms of how distance education benefits the public, and things like that. We've had one of my favorite presentations, I think, of the past year. We had a dear friend and former USDLA president, Janet Major, came in and she talked about telehealth in libraries, which is just not even something that most of us probably have even been aware of, that you can go to your public library and they have resources there. It's not a hospital, it's not a clinic, but that the librarians do, they lend out stethoscopes and different things in many jurisdictions, especially when you get out into rural populations and places where getting to getting to a medical facility is not always the easiest. So again, you'll hear a whole range of topics throughout the year, and then next summer we will have, which is where I got to meet Sheila originally. Next summer we'll be having our national conference. So also more details to come on that, about the exact dates and locations and everything, but that's one of our big events every year as well, where we have not just, and again, we always try to make it not just another conference.
Mhm.
So we do have an awards luncheon to really highlight and feature those who are doing just amazing things in the industry. We have special events, on site, off site. We've done some field trips at times in the past to go see how maybe a large corporation is using distance learning, or how some institution is using it. So every year we try to bring in some unique aspects in addition to the traditional keynotes and sessions and things like that. So yeah, so it's ongoing. It's ongoing. Come and join us, and if you want to even be involved, it's largely volunteer run. So we always welcome extra hands as well.
Excellent. Valerie, thank you so much. I have learned so much today. I appreciate your definitions, because you've got me rethinking a few things, rethinking distance learning, thinking more expansively about gamification. And I am really excited about what's coming up in the next year as we think about distance learning and all these opportunities that we all have to participate and kind of build this community and really build what's next. So thank you so much for joining us today.
And thank you for having me.
The Digital EDU Dialogues podcast is brought to you by the Educity family of companies.